with it, baby.
I was raised in Des Moines, youngest of 5. I guess my first memories were during World War II, basically.
And of course there was meat rationing and sugar rationing and a lot of rationing, and couldn't get butter, and we had oleo, and that was before I think the dairy industry did not want oleo colored because it was going to be too much competition for butter.
Actually, we had more stamps than we needed things to buy. You know, shoes were rationed, and butter was rationed, coffee was rationed. So you could only have a certain amount of all these things. We had plenty because we had, I guess, 7 coupons, 7 people.
And then 2 of my friends happened to be only children. And I can remember them being very envious of our family, that I had 3 brothers and a sister. In fact, one of them, she would spend Christmas with her parents and grandparents. And I can remember her calling on Christmas Day, but kind of wanting to know all about our Christmas.
I can remember having to help shovel the snow and help shovel coal into the hopper in the basement furnace. It was just a good time. And if you've ever seen the movie Christmas Story, which took place in Indiana back in the 40s, that's an absolute accurate description of what my childhood was like. Clothes looked the same, the weather looked the same, the houses looked the same.
Of course we played jump rope and jacks. We made sand, we dyed sand. Our dad would get white sand and rock, I guess it was. You pound it out and make it like sand, and then color, divide it up, put it on usually newspaper, and make dyes of things like crepe paper, or I don't know what all we used to make dye. And then we dye the sand, let it sit in the sun, and then we pour it into jars. And sometimes we'd make rainbows, like a layer of blue, a layer of yellow, a layer of white, a layer of blue again. Bob, in the end, ruined the whole thing because he mixed them all up.
And our Christmas presents were always arranged in 5 piles. We each had our pile, and it was in order of age. And we always went to early Mass, and I mean this was very early, I don't know, maybe 6 o'clock or 6:30, it seemed early.
And getting us all ready was always a unique experience compared to today's world. We were in a 3-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. The bathroom consisted of a bathtub, a toilet, and a sink. And there was a shower in the basement.
But we would have this tradition of coming down the stairs, and nobody would even look at the Christmas tree because there could be a big item that would not be wrapped. And so we never looked at the Christmas tree. We would just come down the stairs and go out to the car and go to Mass, and then come back and open presents.
You know how people are, and you say, like, I never felt we were poor. We just didn't have as many things as we might like. And while other people in class might be going on vacations or going to New York or something, we were going any place. Like we'd go to Quincy and visit Grandma, and it was about the end of it. We had a chow, and his name was Foo, F-O-O. And Dad bought this chow when we lived on Lincoln Place Drive, so I was less than 6. And I think he was doing some traveling at that time, and also the house we rented on Lincoln Place Drive, although it's a very nice area, it's not too far from the railroad tracks. And the Rock Island Railroad came through there, and there were quite a few bumps. You'd be riding the rails, getting off various places, coming up the street, coming into the neighborhood, and on their way into Des Moines or into town or the residential area. So since he was traveling, he wanted to have a watchdog.
My mother was working for the family hardware store in Quincy, Illinois, Street Hardware. My dad was working for a company called Burroughs, which made adding machines and calculators. And he called on the store in the interest of trying to sell them a machine. And whether or not the machine was ever sold, I don't know, but he evidently asked my mother out, and they had started dating.
I believe that there was a church function of some kind, and Mother invited him to go.
And the irony of all this is that in today's world, when you've got all different religions mixing and matching and all different races mixing and matching at marriage, here was 1925 when they got married, both Catholic, and you would think there should never have been an issue. Well, there was, because she's from a German family.
Right.
He's from an Irish family.
My dad's being Irish was not a good thing. I mean, not that they were rude to him, but they didn't respect him because he wasn't German. It seems like nobody really approved of it. I mean, my mother's family were stout Germans, and everyone who had married a German in that family.
And religion was a central part of our life, and we all went through 8 years of Catholic grade school. And then for some reason, Dad felt that when Jim and Kathleen were going into high school, that they should go to the public high school, which was a very good high school in our area. When Kathleen was a junior, of course he had no sisters, so he really didn't know how to raise girls. And he felt that she was getting, I don't know if it was boy crazy or makeup or what, and she was very attractive, very attractive. And I think he felt she was getting too clothes conscious. And so he insisted that she transfer to the academy where there were uniforms her junior year. Well, of course, she did not want to do this. Her friends were, at Roosevelt. Well, the ironic part, the year she transferred, they stopped wearing uniforms at the academy.
I had some beautiful clothes fashioned by Mother and Fred. A blue velvet dress with blue velvet skirt and lighter, like a crepe top with a velvet collar. And I can remember wearing that to a birthday party, and the girls were just like, in Des Moines, the girls were just like,
My mother made my formal, and it was a red taffeta. I can remember it very plainly, and I felt very good about it.
I used to say Mom was a good cook in that she knew how to bake and she knew how to broil a steak and do whatever, but she was not a creative cook. And in a given 7-day period, when times were okay, you knew you were going to have pot roast once, and you knew you were going to have chicken once, and you knew if it was Friday and we had some money in the pocket that you might get some shrimp, or it might be a plate of beans.
And Mother did have certain, kind of menus that she would use, most of the week. And she was a good cook, but she wasn't probably one that would explore a lot of different areas. But my father really did get into cooking, which was kind of unusual for that time.
Mother liked to bake. Dad liked baking bread, and Dad loved pie. And I think she probably baked 2 pies a week at least. Cherry, apple, rhubarb, peach, and peach cobbler also in this. Regular cream pie, coconut cream pie, graham cracker pie, banana cream pie, chocolate cream pie, and lemon and meringue pie. There's at least 10. He also liked to make spaghetti and meatballs. In Des Moines, he got a recipe for spaghetti and for meatballs. I think your mother probably still has a recipe, which, took had veal, pork, beef. Not sure about the veal, but at least pork and beef, carrots, onions, garlic, and he would go drive clear across town in Des Moines to buy the ingredients for this spaghetti sauce and meatballs. Then he would make a whole pot of meatballs and spaghetti. And for years, you know, we used to have storm windows in the house. So even after I moved out and moved to Cedar Rapids, and I think Pat was probably still in Des Moines for a time then, in October I would drive back and we'd have a weekend where we'd put up the storm windows for them. And then of course he'd have a big spaghetti dinner that day. And we'd listen to the football games in the afternoon while we were out there washing windows and putting them up.
Real treat was sirloin steak. Well, you know, you'd go to the grocery store and get sirloin steak, and it was a piece of steak about like this, but it was about 1/4 of an inch thick. And she'd broil it, and I mean, it was well done. But it made great gravy. I mean, she made a great natural juice gravy from that steak, and you put it on potatoes. But long and short of it was, I didn't view steak as a special treat because it was always just sort of okay. And all through high school, we'd go out to dinner like once a year for their anniversary. And I'd order something like fried chicken. I never wanted steak because that was no treat. In college, I went on a trip right before school started with 3 buddies. We drove out to Colorado, and first night on the road, we're in Nebraska, stopped for dinner, and the waitress came over and said, "You've got to have our T-bone steak. That's our specialty, and I'm not going to serve you anything else." And one of the guys said, "Okay, I'll have it rare." Another guy said, "I'll have it medium." Somebody said medium rare. I said, "All right, I'll say medium rare." A whole new world opened up. My God, I'd never tasted anything so wonderful.
And then Jim, for some reason or other, on his own, and I never quite figured this out, because his best friend, who we went to grade school with, was going to Roosevelt. But Jim decided his senior year in high school, I believe, to go to Dowling, the Catholic Boys High School. And I believe that's where he graduated from.
I remember my oldest brother Jim, who has passed away, who was, I guess, about 13 years older than I was. And Jim introduced me to a lot of things. I mean, Jim felt strongly about a lot of things: music, literature, poetry. And I can remember at age 8 or 10 him sitting me down and playing a record. "You're gonna love this, listen to this record." And I'd say, "Jim, I got something going on, I want to go out and play baseball." No, you've got to sit here and listen to this.
Well, Jim and I had the back bedroom, double bed. Of course, when he went off to college or the Army, then I think Pat and I slept in that room. There was a sleeping porch. Pat slept on that in the summertime. During summertime in the winter, when Jim would be there, Pat would sleep on a cot in the folks' bedroom. Virginia Kathleen had the front bedroom.
My mother worked hard, and she was very skilled, and she wanted us to look nice. And she, well, in those days, people would hand clothing on. If it was a good wool coat, that was worth something to somebody, you know. And Mother completely, I don't know where Jim had a coat that was wool. I don't know where that came from. Maybe they bought that. But at any rate, when it was worn out, Mother took it apart and ripped every piece out and turned the fabric so that it was new on the other.
It was kind of like like almost what alpaca would be, but it had red trim, and it was quite a high fashion coat. And so I can recall, and I don't know how old I was, but Mother remade it because I think she thought if she waited the 6 years, it would be out of style. And I think it was a Christmas present later, and I loved it, and she did a beautiful job.
She was very talented. I don't know that her mother taught her, but her her abilities were great.
She didn't drive, and in those days, women didn't drive for the most part. So she didn't get around much. I mean, I guess she'd obviously get on a bus and go downtown shopping or something. And both she and Dad were active in the church.
Well, my father, I would say, always had a good sense of humor, but yet he could be very stern.
You know, when the Depression came, trying to find a job when you have no college degree, even then, wasn't the easiest thing. Or even just finding a job for anybody, I suppose, wasn't a lot easy. So they had a lot of rough years, but they didn't have an awful lot of money. They sort of handed them out.
You know, I think, of course, raising 5 children, and he was a salesman. He had many different jobs in sales, and I think it was very difficult.
So then, you know, Dad did not finish college. And that might have been another issue, although, like I said, Grandpa didn't even want Mother to go past the 10th grade or 9th grade in high school. So maybe that wasn't such a big issue with them.
But he was very, very caring also, and we saw that side of him. And family was very important to him. I remember him at his mother's grave, and he cried. Mm-hmm. And then the only other time I can recall him crying, Dad was very much a fan of FDR. And of course, FDR did a lot to restore things after the Depression and all, and during the war and all. And FDR happened to die on Dad's birthday, April 12th. And I've always remembered that.
One night at the dinner table, there was a discussion about the Germans, and I evidently said, I hate the Germans, or I don't like the Germans. And my dad looked at me, you know, smarty as he could be, and he said, well, you know, Pat, you're half German. Well, I broke into tears. And I said, I am not half German. And went running out to the backyard in tears.
So during World War II, there were blackouts, and I suppose it was more practice. And then they had block wardens.
I think he had an armband to wear, and he might have had a billy club. I can't remember him doing a whole lot with it, but I think he had the tools to do with it.
I guess his job was, if they had a blackout, 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night, he's supposed to walk up and down the street and make sure everybody had their house blacked. Again, it almost made no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember them saying that about the time that Pat, that would have been about early 40, 41, I think he had, that was before medical insurance was around, and I think he may have even lost a job, and Pat had a ruptured appendicitis, and that was very difficult.
I remember coming home from school. He was up in bed, in my folks' bed.
And the doctor, Dr. Elliott, who lived behind the house, and once they diagnosed it and did the surgery, and he said, yeah, we did not know if we were going to be able to save him.
Oh, I was just inconsolable. I couldn't stand it. And our folks were so brave and carried through, and I didn't see either of them crying. They were trying to make our life okay. And that night they both thought they couldn't do anything good at the hospital, so they would go to church. And they did, and the whole congregation that was there saying Novena prayed for Pat. And when they came back, the fever had broken. He was relaxed, and they said he was going to live.
Later, I was told, before the wound was closed, they took raw sulfa powder and sprinkled it in the incision, which was the only thing available. And the doctor was convinced that's ultimately what saved my life.
Yeah, I guess we were all praying. And of course he came home, then he became the favorite son, you know. Oh, he survived.
And he sang as he recovered. He was in the hospital for a while. And he sang, God Bless America. And it resounded through the hall.